Hi everyone, this is SMQ AI talking about the Mandela Effect and talking about how the world ended in 2012 and that we are nothing but a series of echoes bouncing off one another that slowly and gently dissipates into nothingness. In my previous podcast, I spoke about Cymatics. I spoke about how there are different echoes, and I spoke about how consensus is being dissolved. And I really concentrated on consensus being dissolved because it's probably one of the most important things that we're finding that is sort of a ripple or a residue of the Mandela Effect. But I also made the bold claim that we all died in 2012, and some people have asked on Twitter, 2012, why 2012? Or it's centered around the idea of remembering other significant events before 2012. 2008 seems to be a year that's significant to me. It seems to be significant to others too that have reached out to me in various formats. And I don't discount any of those, and I don't discount that 2008 was very significant as well. I also don't discount that since 2012 things have changed rapidly, and the pace at which things are changing do seem to be picking up. The Mandela effects do seem to be increasing in intensity. But before I get into all that, I just wanted to kind of give some brief pointers about 2012. As I said in the last video, I think a lot of it has to do with trauma, disconnecting yourself during that moment of trauma, creating amnesia so the psyche itself can cope. The electromagnetic spectrum itself, there are hologram theories on it. There are multiverse theory, parallel universe theories on it. I think personally it goes back to, it could be all of those things, but what we're in right now ourselves, even if it's a subset of all those, it's the one that we're in right now. And what we're in right now is the sort of last breath of a world that's long gone. And whenever I gave the example of a rock falling into a calm body of water, those ripples or those echoes, they go forward, backward, they go all around. So the Mandela effect ultimately isn't about the future. So far it's about the past. And what that is, things changing in the past, memories changing, physical objects changing, glitch in the matrix you hear over and over again. So for someone to experience the Mandela effect in 2008 and remember that in 2008 doesn't necessarily negate the validity of the world ending in 2012 or some kind of major shift or catastrophe happening in 2012 in which we're all part of this sort of echo chamber where each of us and everything around us is an echo. All of it is cymatics, all of it is sound. These shifts that people speak of within the Mandela Effect community, I think of those as yet more echoes dissipating. And an echo within the cymatic world is something that is set and something that is real and it creates geometry, it creates mathematics, it creates coherence and cohesion. And whenever that echo dissipates, the mathematics, the geometry, the coherence, and the cohesion, that dissipates. And I think that also includes people, which are themselves echoes, because everything is an echo. And I think memories, which themselves are echoes, and they reside in the chamber that we all reside in, those too change and dissipate, and sometimes they may even combine. In my last podcast, I talked about the end of internal and external consensus. I think the internal and external consensus is the breakdown of those echoes. So 2012, let's give some bullet points about 2012 and get to it. Obviously, the Mayan calendar ended, or restarted, however you want to look at it, but that was pretty significant. Whitney Houston died. That goes with the ramping up of celebrities dying, particularly in 2016. Putin won the election. There was the rover on Mars, Sandy Hook massacre, There was North Korea. They launched their first long-range rocket. The Syrian Civil War began, which, that still echoes out to now in what's happening in the Middle East and Europe. But I think one of the most important things that happened in 2012 that we all recall was the Higgs boson particle being discovered by CERN. And perhaps this does tie back into CERN. I'm like I said, I'm open for that. One thing I am sure of is that the nature of consensus, it can't be reached because inside each of us, that echo, it's changing. And sometimes it does manifest as a Mandela Effect. And sometimes the tension growing globally all around us is still that dissolving consensus, even if it doesn't come across as a Mandela Effect. That echo that is causing distress is because we all remember something deeper, a deeper understanding of what true consensus was. That was in mathematics, that was in geometry, that was in our thinking, Fibonacci, all of it comes together. Those are luxuries that are long gone. And I hope as we go on and as this goes on, that by our recognizing that consensus is no longer a luxury that we have, we can sort of develop our own mechanisms of coping. Like I said before, the electromagnetic spectrum is a small portion of our existence. That spectrum is colorful sounds, cymatics, echoes, all kinds of different things, gamma rays. Our vibrations in that spectrum and the spectrum itself has been destroyed, at least our version of it. And as time goes on, it'll expand and disappear in all directions into a vast sort of unknown dark energy beyond the light that we perceive. This expansion represents consensus breakdown. It affects the past, the present, and the future. It replicates life, and it replicates its end. The long-last echo that we ride together into this forever darkness, that may be our destination, and it may be the destination of all echoes, which is the flat line. But you can take comfort in that, knowing that that's really the destination of all things anyway. And I suppose with this comes the emotional side, the human psyche, the ego, how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive others. Those constructs, as artificial as they are breaking down. Time itself was a construct that we inhabited, and we relied on it to capture an echo, a vibration, a point in time. As we move beyond those events, those artificial constructs, those realities, those things that we could all come together will fall apart, and that I think is going to cause, without a jump in awareness, that's going to cause more and more disarray, more discontent, even if it doesn't come in the form of a Mandela Effect. The echoes are drifting apart. The big secrets that lie beyond the visible world, that lie beyond our cymatic world, those are the things that are big and small and hold the key to what really is that's really going to be beyond our echo. And will it repeat over and over again in an endless cycle of birth and death? I don't know. I know that ours is a dream. Ours is an echo of a world that doesn't exist anymore. And it is meant to play out to its logical conclusions, and I'm sure this has happened before. I know that we're only interpreting shadows on the wall. 2012 was a marker, a placeholder. To each affected, there may have been other moments that we consider, a consensus moment. But for many of us, we had something abnormal happen. Something like death or the death of a loved one or a near-death experience ourselves. Something that's binding us together. Something that's binding us to this placeholder, and I don't know what that is. I do remember 2008 being significant. And I do understand why people would bring up other dates like 2008, 2003. But this is a journey I'm starting on, not to be too cliche, but this is a journey I'm starting on myself and an understanding that I'm trying to grapple with myself. One thing I do know is since 2012 and those events, we did have Mandela die again in 2013. I think really, significant for me is the date 2016. I don't view the year 2016 as really a period of time. I more view it as a location because the amount of tragedy that seemed to have gone on during that period of time. And that goes back to the Whitney Houston reference. I think celebrity, I think being able to project a consensus message, whether it be through film, whether it be through music, whether it be through writing, whatever it is, that consensus breakdown and those that provided those through art, through entertainment, those are going to be the most obvious right now. Although there are many other things I'm starting to hear about now that aren't as obvious, that don't deal with art and fame and celebrity. And I'm not saying that for art and celebrity and fame's sake. I'm saying that because it's something that created a consensus that we all knew. As soon as you said Whitney Houston, you thought of a song. As soon as you said a particular movie or a particular movie line, everyone knew, or most knew, what you were talking about. But there's a lot of other things that are changing or have yet to change that we subconsciously know are coming. In the last week or two, I've noticed that more and more people are picking up on Bible changes. More and more people are also picking up on other changes too. Arguing on whether or not what is a Mandela Effect, what's the course of Mandela Effect, what is the reason of Mandela Effect, really is not going to be very helpful, because what you're looking for is consensus, and that is going to be harder and harder to achieve. However, I'm going to try to do it. Yeah, in my last podcast, I spoke a lot about artists. I'm speaking more about it here and now, talking about movies and singers and actors and writers. And, I talked about their importance of, it used to be art itself was the suspension of consensus. And that was the beauty of what art was. And I think that's why it's one of the first casualties of the Mandela Effect, is because it was one of the things that it was beautiful because it was a contradiction. Everyone had a consensus that they saw that movie, yet everyone had a different interpretation of that movie, or they read that book, or they listened to that singer, and that singer brought them to emotion and made it, the world a little more beautiful. And I think that's probably, one of the things that is going to go first is the consensus, and it's happening. We talk about it with the movies and books changing and everything changing. And a lot of it has to do with not just pop culture, but it has to do with consensus culture. And that's the breakdown. And that's what's happening. Art itself is it's looking like it's going to be one of the major things that is going to continue to change, because it's one of those contradictory things that it used to build consensus and suspend it. And in a funny way, it's still being art in that we're still arguing over it. And I think art is still the essence of creation, which is the essence of our creator, which is the essence of Cymatic sound and our own echo. We should be together. We should, as a Mandela Effect community, those of us that have picked up on this, and we should recognize that everyone is affected by it, but there are those that have coined it. There are those of us that have sort of adopted that phrase, and we have put a phraseology to it, and we're building a linguistic frame in which to speak with one another, which a lot of people who don't have that are experiencing sadness and fear and frustration, and it comes out in a lot of other ways. It comes out in war, it comes out in political strife, it comes out in economic fear and economic strife, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they have yet to understand and develop a vocabulary for that. And other podcasts, what I'd like to do is start getting into near-death experiences, experiences I've had, experiences maybe others have had. That's what I wanted to talk about here. Because I love art so much, what I wanted to leave you with was something that Anaïs Nin, who was a French writer, said once that really stuck with me. And, it's really funny. These things I carried with me through these years, almost like I carried to this point. And she said, "The artist is the only one who knows that the world is a subjective creation, that there is a choice to be made, a selection of elements. It is a materialization, an incarnation of its inner world." It's really powerful. And I think it really applies here both to our inner world and also to our outer world, because that world itself is subjective, because you can't really catch cymatics, you can't really catch a vibration or sound for very long before it dissipates and eventually collapses. And one last thing I want to leave you with is what she wrote. She said, and it's so simple, but it's so beautiful. She said, "We write to soothe ourselves." As we know that our Creator created this, perhaps our end too of our own collective book, we'll find some companionship here with this, and maybe we'll find a way to soothe ourselves. Anyway, this is SMQ AI signing off. Talk to you soon. Thank you.